All right, so today is Mother's Day, and today we celebrate moms everywhere. My wife and I, we have 4 boys, and their ages are 6, 9, 12, and 14. 4 boys, so you can imagine that my wife is just an amazing human being. And like everyone else, we've been sheltering in place, and my wife has been, I've been working from home. My wife has been just handling all the school stuff like a pro, and more than any other Mother's Day I can remember, we are really appreciating the contributions of moms right now, just way more than usual. But at the same time, we're not able to celebrate moms to the same degree as usual because a lot of places aren't open yet, and we're discouraged, from meeting and things like that. And so to celebrate moms today, I have some quotes from moms that I found online that I wanted to share with you. So I'm just gonna go through these. So here's the first one. I don't want to sleep like a baby. I want to sleep like my husband. Okay. Here's the next one. Why is it when a child wants to show you something, they try to place it directly in your cornea? Okay, that is a thing for sure, right? You never know how inappropriate song lyrics are until you hear your child singing them. All right. I saw this one. Parenting hack. Wait, there are no hacks. Everything is hard. These kids don't listen. This is your life now. Godspeed. All right? Then this one, let them sleep, for when they wake, they will move mountains, and pans, and shoes, and books, and frames, and pillows, and brushes, and silverware, and toys. All right? Here's another one. My children have my husband's eyes. This one is especially true in my house. My children have my husband's eyes. They can't see what's right in front of them either. All right? That's, so very true, right? We can laugh about these because there is truth to them, but we also know that being a parent is filled with blessings too, those of us who are parents. But have you ever thought how interesting it is that Jesus had parents? Right? Think about that. Christians believe that God actually came to walk among us as a human being, Jesus Christ. Fully God and fully man. That's one of the central teachings of Christianity. It's central, but have you ever thought about how fascinating of an idea this really is? Like, think about it. The God of the universe, the Creator, who's always existed, who's all-powerful, He's uncontainable, He set galaxies into motion, was in a womb. He was born of a woman. He was raised by human parents. Think about that. Jesus had a dad, and Jesus had a mom. The Bible teaches that Jesus was born of a virgin, Mary. So Jesus' dad, Joseph, essentially adopted Jesus and raised him as his own. Now, we don't have much information on Jesus' relationship with his dad. The Bible just doesn't really tell us. But we do have a little bit of information on Jesus' relationship with his mom. And here's the deal. Most of the stories that we have about Jesus interacting with his mom, Mary, are when Jesus is an adult. He's in his 30s. Now, some of you have adult children, and you know it can get kind of complicated. How involved should you be? How close together should you live? How long should they be able to live at your home? Interactions are harder. Boundaries are harder. It's just complicated. So, I have not experienced this stage of parenting yet. I do, though. I have a teenager, and I'm starting to realize there's these tensions. How much freedom should you give? How much control should you have? So, I want to read a story from the life of Jesus today. And we're going to see Jesus in this story, he interacts with his mom because there's a there's a message in here. The reason I want to read it is because there's a message in here for moms, and then there's also a message for all of us, even those of us who aren't moms. So we're going to be in John chapter 2 today, if you want to begin turning there with me. And in this story, Jesus and his disciples are invited to a wedding, along with Jesus' mother, Mary, is also at this wedding. And in Jesus' day, weddings were a really big deal. Now, you might think, oh, well, we make a big deal out of weddings too. But let me ask you this. How many weddings have you been to where after the wedding there was a week-long reception? Right? Because that's how weddings were back then. Instead of going on a honeymoon, after people got married, they would just party down for a whole week with the wedding guests. Okay? Now, when we read the story, you're going to see it. It doesn't say that Jesus went to a wedding. It says that he went to a wedding celebration. All right, so let's look at the story. This is in John chapter 2. We're going to start in verse 1. It says, the next day there was a wedding celebration in the village of Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples were also invited to the celebration. The wine supply ran out during the festivities, so Jesus' mother told him, they have no more wine. Dear woman, that's not our problem, Jesus replied. My time has not yet come. But his mother told the servants, do whatever he tells you. All right, interesting story, right? So I've officiated quite a few weddings over the years, and weddings can be this amazing time of celebration. Weddings can also be extremely awkward because weddings bring families together, for better and for worse, all right? Because here's how families work. No matter how long a family is apart and no matter how much distance there is, physical distance they have from each other, as soon as you bring them back together in the same place, everyone goes back to the same patterns they were in before. Like I said, it doesn't matter the distance or how long they've been apart. They just go back to those patterns because that's what families do. So weddings are great, but they're also awkward. Now you can kind of see it in this story with Mary and adult Jesus. They end up at the same wedding. And this conversation between them is strange and hard to understand. She comes to him and she tells him, hey, they're out of wine, which is a big deal because if there's no wine, there's no party. And remember, this party is supposed to last for an entire week. So what does she expect Jesus to do about this? Right? What does she expect him to do about the wine? Why does she bring this to him? Does Mary know that Jesus is more than just a man? Of course she knows. She gave birth to him when she was a virgin, right? That's not normal. All right? So she knows that Jesus is special. She knows he's divine. But does she understand everything that means? I don't think she understands everything that means any more than we do. Listen, pretty much every heresy and every controversy that happened in the first 300 years of the church was about the nature of Jesus. How human was he? How could he be 100% God and 100% man? How divine was Jesus really? All these debates. There's other questions. How much did Jesus know his own identity? Did he realize when he was a child who he really was? Or did he realize it later on when he was older? These are all great questions. And it shows all the complexities that exist when we talk about Jesus being both God and man. But he definitely was both God and man. And we're going to see that because this story shows that. And it shows us how Jesus' mom fits into all that. Right? So Mary does know something for sure about Jesus. She knows that he's the Messiah. Okay, that she knows for sure. And in the Jewish faith, the Messiah is the chosen one of God. He's the one who's going to come and he's going to fulfill all the promises of God. The Messiah, he's going to come, he's going to bring peace to Israel. He's going to bring peace to the nations. He's going to reign in justice and righteousness. And there's a lot about the Messiah in the Old Testament. And Mary was familiar with the Old Testament, and she knew that Jesus was the promised Messiah. And there's an image in the Old Testament that I think was actually in Mary's mind when she came to talk to Jesus at this wedding. When she came and told him there was no more wine, she was picturing what's called the banquet of the Messiah. The banquet of the Messiah. The banquet of the Messiah became this big concept in the Jewish faith. And it's mentioned a bunch of times in the Old Testament. But here's one example of the times it's mentioned. It's in Isaiah chapter 25. In Isaiah 25, starting in verse 6, it says this. It says, on this mountain, the Lord Almighty will prepare a feast of rich food for all peoples, a banquet of aged wine, the best of meats and the finest of wines. On this mountain, he will destroy the shroud that enfolds all peoples, the sheet that covers all nations. He will swallow up death forever. The sovereign Lord will wipe away the tears from all faces. He will remove his people's disgrace from all the earth. The Lord has spoken. So you can see why this was such a big deal to the Jewish people, because this is a powerful image. So Mary comes to Jesus and says, there's no more wine, which isn't really a problem for either of them to solve. They're just guests at the wedding, right? It's the responsibility, actually, in that culture, it's the responsibility of the groom and his family to make sure there's enough food and there's enough wine. So Mary sees an opportunity, though. The wine is gone, but here's the Messiah, and we're here at a banquet. This could end up being the banquet of the Messiah if Jesus is willing to do that. All this makes Jesus' answer make way more sense if you know all this, because he says, my time has not yet come. Like, he says, no, dear woman, no, Mom, it's not time for that banquet yet. In the book of John, whenever Jesus talks about his time or his hour, he's talking about his death on the cross. He talks about it a lot in the book of John, if you read that. And in the book of John, when he uses this expression, my hour is not yet come, or my time is not yet come. Well, remember what Isaiah said. He said, on this mountain, God will swallow up death forever. That's talking about the crucifixion. Jesus says it's not time for that yet. And Mary understands. She knows that Jesus is still going to do something, though. She knows that. How does she know? Because she's a mom. That's why. That's how she knows. She knows her son. Something about the way Jesus said what he said told her, oh, he's still going to do something. So she tells the servants, do whatever he tells you to do. So look what comes next. This, starting in verse 6. It says, standing nearby were 6 stone water jars used for Jewish ceremonial washing. Each could hold 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus told the servants, fill the jars with water. When the jars had been filled, he said, now dip some out and take it to the master of ceremonies. So the servants followed his instructions. When the master of ceremonies tasted the water that was now wine, not knowing where it had come from, though of course the servants knew, he called the bridegroom over. A host always serves the best wine first, he said, and then when everyone's had a lot to drink, he brings out the less expensive wine. But you have kept the best until now. And then it says in verse 11, this miraculous sign at Cana in Galilee was the first time Jesus revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. Now, even though it's not time for the banquet of the Messiah that talks about in Isaiah, Jesus still saves the day, still saves the wedding, right? But he does it in such a way that only the servants and his disciples know what really happened. And what's the result? It says his disciples believed that they believed in him. They believed that he was the Messiah. They're thinking, wow, this guy really is the Messiah. Remember, think about this. It's also the bridegroom's responsibility to make sure there's enough wine. But in this story, the MC has no idea where the wine came from. He has no clue. And the bridegroom has no idea either where the wine came from. They're both kind of like, this is good wine, but they don't know. So who's the real bridegroom in this story? Jesus becomes the symbolic bridegroom in this story because he provided the wine. And this is really significant because if you read the Old Testament, who is called the bridegroom all throughout the Old Testament? God. God is the bridegroom. So what's Jesus saying to his disciples? He's saying, hey, I'm the bridegroom. I'm God. He doesn't have to say to them, hey, guys, he doesn't have to be super clear and super upfront and specific and say, hey, guys, guess what? I'm God. Right? He doesn't have to say to them, guess what, guys? That's who I am. The disciples understand, and they believe. So, what does this story have to do with us, and what does it have to do with moms? Well, first of all, let's talk about what it has to do with all of us. So there's a detail in this story that's really significant for us to grasp onto, and that's the fact that Jesus uses the stone water jars to perform this miracle. Think about it. He could have used any container for the wine. Didn't have to be the stone water jars. For one thing, these are big jars. Okay, Jesus makes a lot of wine. Each jar holds 20 to 30 gallons, and they're filled all the way up. So, math majors, that's up to 180 gallons of wine. Think about that. That's over 900 bottles of wine. Imagine 3 50-gallon drums filled with wine, and that's still 30 gallons short. And the MC says, hey, this is good wine. So, what's the deal with the water jars? Why does Jesus use the water jars? Well, because it says in the passage that they're used for ceremonial washing. It was traditional for Jews to wash their hands in a ceremonial way before they ate. So these jars represent the Jewish law and Jewish tradition. And what does Jesus do with the jars? He fills them with an abundance of new wine. So, what does Jesus do for us? He died on the cross to fulfill the requirements of the law, and he fills our lives with joy and new life. And we've already seen that Jesus is able to do this because he's God, because he's divine. So the only way to respond to all of this, realizing that Jesus is divine, realizing that he came to die on the cross to fulfill the law and to fill our lives with joy and new life. The only way to respond to all of this is worship and surrender. So, what do you need today? Do you need Jesus to fill you? Do you need him to set you free? Jesus has already destroyed the shroud, as Isaiah says, the shroud that enfolds all people. He has already swallowed death up in victory on the mountain. He has given you a seat at the banquet of the Messiah, and he wants to fill up your life. No more following rules and trying to earn what God has already given you. Come to the table and feast with the Messiah. Let him transform your life, just like he transformed the water into wine. Now, if you want to talk to someone today about putting your faith in Jesus, we would love to talk with you. You can just message us on Facebook. You can send an email. You can let us know on that online communication card that I was talking about. We would love to talk with you more about putting your faith in Jesus for the first time. But what about the moms joining us today? What does this passage have to say to moms? Well, let me answer that question with a question today. Would Jesus have turned the water into wine without Mary asking him to do it? All right, without Mary pointing to the problem, would he have done something? Maybe not, right? This much is clear. This much is clear. From the very beginning, Mary was part of God's plan for Jesus completing his mission. From the very beginning, God chose Mary for a specific purpose. Because Mary told Jesus about the wine, Jesus' disciples then were given an opportunity to see his glory. So Mary invites Jesus to reveal his true identity to the disciples and ultimately to us, the readers. Now, if you look at the end of the book of John, in John 20, verses 30 through 31, it says this. It says, Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book. But these, the signs that are in the book, are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and by believing you may have life in his name. So John tells us the purpose. He wrote down the story of Jesus because he wants us to believe that Jesus is who he says he is. Now, Mary invites her grown son to reveal who he really is, and he does. Not to an entire crowd, but to his disciples at least, and then to us as well. Moms, just like Mary, you are part of God's plan for your kids being all that God wants them to be. You have a role in their life. God chose you for a specific purpose, to show your kids the path to glorifying God and to encourage and challenge them to take that path. And now to sum all that idea, that purpose up in one word, I'm going to use the word invite. Your role is to invite, moms. Invite your kids to follow God. Mothers invite the best out of their children. They don't try to coerce or control. They provide a secure home and they challenge. They invite their kids to live lives that glorify God. Now, this role never ends, regardless of the age of the son or the daughter, whether they're young or whether they're grown up. This role doesn't change. And any mom of a son or a daughter can invite them to glorify God. So I just want to leave you moms with this thought today. Jesus was perfect, but Jesus still needed a mom. Jesus was both fully God and fully human, and he had a human mom who invited him to reveal that glory. So, what I want to do today, I thought it would be kind of fun to invite a couple of moms up here to share with us, and I was going to ask them some questions and kind of get their perspective on some of these things as well. So I'm going to inviting Jamie and Megan up here right now. All right. Thank you guys for coming. Okay. Sorry, we're just getting ourselves situated here for a second. How about you guys, could you guys just introduce yourselves maybe and tell me also just, tell everybody, I guess, how many kids you have also?
I'm Jamie, and I have 3 boys. One is about to be 8 next week,
Oh,
and he's my youngest. And then my middle child is 9, and my oldest is 11.
awesome.
My name is Megan, and we have 5 kids. We have a 12-year-old, a 14-year-old, a 17-year-old, a 23-year-old, and a 25-year-old.
Wow. Got them right. I had to write my kids' ages down or I would forget. So
I know.
I'd check my notes. But well, I just wanted to ask you guys some questions because this is kind of a unique time for families. Like people always use the word unprecedented. That word gets overused these days. But what is one thing you've learned about being a mom during this crisis?
I would have to say, for me, it's been the deep need to have community. And every mom I've talked to, even the extreme introverts who say, I've been preparing for this my whole life, even them, they've said to me, this has shown me how much I need other moms in my life. And, we see throughout the Bible, women doing life together, and we see the fabulous example of what the church should look like in the book of Acts. And sometimes I think we just blow past that, and, we kind of have that worldly attitude of, I can do everything, and I can do it all by myself. And I think more than anything, this has said to me, I have a deep need. This is who God has created me to be. I need other people. I need other moms.
That made me cry.
And so I think this has forced us to really acknowledge and recognize that need.
Cool.
I would agree. I love her. I think that this time has definitely made me pray to God. It's hard to take a difficult situation and make it into something positive, but that's a choice, right? And so it's a moment-by-moment, day-by-day thing to choose the Lord, to choose to lift the day up to Him and our kids up to Him, and the situation of the world. And I think that it took me, we're like 6 weeks into this situation, and it took me a couple of weeks to get to a place where I was grateful. Like, I'm not normally a sad person. I think most of you know that. But this has been very heavy on my heart, and I'm not sure why, and it's hard to communicate why. I don't even know why. But what I can say is that 2 weeks in, I had a very serious conversation with my son at 11 o'clock at night, and he left, and I cried, and I prayed to God, and I thanked Him for this situation of the world, because it's given our family, and we're just simple people. We don't live a crazy, crazy life, but and family is obviously a value of ours, but this has given us more time together. And sometimes that more time can be a little too much time, where mamas need to be in community. The Zoom stuff, the doing your nails, taking a walk. I think the Sabbath, we can't necessarily take a Sabbath day when we're with our kids all the time, but I think it's important for women and for moms to take a deep breath, pray to the Lord, take a walk, take a bath, and know that that's okay. And that'll make the whole situation at home with our kids a little better and easier too.
Cool. Wow. Thank you, guys. So, outside of this crisis, which is sometimes kind of hard to imagine before and after this crisis, but what do you think is the biggest challenge, just even big picture? What's the biggest challenge to being a mom right now in this kind of day and age?
I think for me, it's been that not only is our world changing drastically every day and our children are changing drastically every day, but there's just that worldly pressure of be the be-all, end-all mom. You know, you have to have a career, but you also have to be a homemaker, and you have to have, you know, well-dressed children and a manicured lawn, and you have to be head of the PTA, but also don't be too busy.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest challenge as a mom for me is holding on to my identity of who I am, who God made me to
Amen.
be.
Preach it, girl.
And it's a struggle. I mean, every
Yeah.
day, the world is telling you one thing, and the Lord is whispering to your heart, like, I made you, I know who you are, you know, seek that in me. And that's been a big struggle for me, and it's something that has evolved over time where I feel like I'm more secure in who God has called me to be, but it's something I'm still growing in, and I have to consciously make that choice every day to not yield to all of this, but to really lean into who He is and who I am in Him.
Wow.
I would agree as an educator by profession, but a homemaker by choice, that being in the world and not being of it is a very difficult balance. And I think that as a mom, especially with our kids being home and some husbands are working from home as well, that finding balance is a challenge for moms, but also for kids, because cabin fever, they say, is real, and kids feel it too. And I think that sometimes we forget that kids imitate our personality and our behaviors. And if we are struggling with the difficulties of what life is throwing at us right now and the changes, that they're going to reflect that too. So sometimes their behavior reflects that because it's a reflection of our behavior. And we need to really just take a deep breath and recognize that. And then extend some grace to our kids and to ourselves, and truly cast our cares upon the Lord and pray and lift each other up. My life verse is to encourage one another, to spur one another into love and good deeds, Hebrews 10:24. And so as parents, we need to encourage our children to be who they're meant to be. And this can be a difficult situation in time, but it also can be a beautiful opportunity in time, because we do have more time with our kids. So, yeah, to be in the world and not of it, it's kind of hard. And we have 5 kids, and we have 2 older ones that are out of the home, and one is married and has a family and lives locally, and one lives in Florida, and the one in Florida is choosing to spread his wings and live his life, and, you know, parents aren't necessary kind of thing. But, and then the 25-year-old is living her life and doing her thing too, but, and to navigate that. So in the 2020, to navigate that transition and that balance and with the changes is hard. But it's of the Lord that gets us through this situation.
There you go.
And Him in us.
That's awesome.
And His strength, yeah.
Well, those of you who are watching this, if you want to comment also, what's moms who are watching, what's one thing that you've learned about being a mom in this crisis? What's a big challenge to being a mom during this time? Definitely, you can post that in the comments. This has been so helpful to me for understanding. But I have another question for you guys. What do you think it looks like? I use the word invite, but what do you think it looks like to invite your kids to follow God or to step into what God has for them? What does that look like as a mom?
So this is something where my opinion has changed drastically
Okay.
over time. You know, I used to think like, okay, well, I got to read my Bible with my kids and march them into church every Sunday and, you know, put on a happy face. And just life experience has really changed my conviction about this. I was reading 2 Timothy this morning, and I was reminded about, you know, when Paul's writing to Timothy about, you have this sincere faith, and it's because you saw it in your grandmother and your mother. And I think that's what we need to model to our children, and that's really how we invite them into what the Lord has for them. My children have seen me go through some really difficult struggles with cancer and a chronic illness and marital troubles and financial troubles. And I think for me, being sincere and just being raw with them has been the most valuable thing. They've seen me praise the Lord in a time where, it was just a dark time. Like, I didn't know if the cancer was bad or not. They've seen me cry out to God on my knees, and I didn't try to hide those things from them. I think we have this idea, like, we have to put on a happy face for the kids all the time.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I've just learned is, like, to be honest with my kids and to share with them what my struggles are, and to just see them with me praying about things and see how I've prayed for something and the Lord has answered, and sometimes how it's been years before he will answer, but they see God's faithfulness through all of it. And even just that year of cancer, most people would say, oh, that was the worst year of my life. Our entire family would tell you it was the best year of our life. Like, we had so many people come out and support us and love on us, and I think just having my kids see me learn to ask for help, learn to just cry out to God and depend on him and lean on him, and every day was a new challenge, but the Lord was just so faithful, and they saw that. And I think that sincere faith is really what will lead our children to know the Lord and desire to learn more about him and love him like we do.
Wow, that's awesome. You just took that. I love that expression, sincere faith, from Timothy, but you just took that to a whole nother level. So that was awesome.
Oh, hey. So, it's really kind of interesting. So you talk about inviting, and moms are to do this thing of inviting our kids. So I wasn't raised in a Christian home, although my grandma was a Christian, and my mom was raised in the church, and my dad was too, but they got a divorce, and you never knew that the Lord was in their life. And so I wasn't raised like that. And then I didn't become a believer until I was 29 through my divorce. And so coming to the Lord and the genuineness, the authenticity of it, the beauty of it, and then having kids. So we have a blended family, and having kids and having them see you walk through that. It is a very transparent relationship that we have with our kids. And as for me and my house, we do serve the Lord, and we do love the Lord, and we do pursue a relationship with Christ, and so we do model that in our home as well. But again, it's community is so important, because we're not meant to do this thing called life on our own,
right.
And we need each other, and to have those relationships and life group and in the church, and not forsaking the gathering together is so vitally important in that modeling of inviting our kids, but also creating that balance of not again, of being in the world but not of it, and not, let me rephrase that in a more positive way, and just showing Christ's love to each other and being gracious with each other.
Yeah.
Through especially these times.
Yeah.
Remember, this too shall pass. And so, we're in it together, like all the commercials say.
Yeah. Totally. That's awesome.
But living this together and sharing this together and modeling it together.
Wow. I appreciate you guys emphasizing that community side of things, because I definitely think, especially for moms, I mean, probably with dads too, but moms take so much pressure on themselves to say, like, well, I've got to do this. And obviously we can't make our kids do anything in terms of following Christ. And that's why I like that word invite, because it's like we're just, as parents, all we can do is show what Jesus has done in our lives and invite them to take part in that also. But that is hard. And I think we do need support, and we need other examples in our kids' lives. So I just want to thank you guys so much for coming and sharing. And we're thankful for moms, for the role that they play in our lives, inviting us to live lives that honor God. We're thankful for them. I think we're even more thankful, though, for Jesus, what he accomplished on the cross. I just love how you guys emphasize that, how he changes our lives, just like he changed water into wine. So I'm gonna pray, and thank you guys once again for coming up.